scene, an Englishman named Sir Thomas More wrote a book titled Utopia. He wrote the book to describe a perfect society on an imaginary island. In his book, written in Latin, More discussed the fictional society's religion, politics, and social customs. What was Sir Thomas More's purpose in writing his controversial novel? Many believe that he wrote this book to criticize negative aspects of his contemporary society. He wanted to point out problems he saw in the courts of the kings and queens of Europe, particularly the court of Henry VIII of England. More's ideas spread quickly. Many authors began writing about fictional utopian societies in order to point out what they were unhappy about in their own societies. So, was More's utopia really a perfect place to live? More's utopian society seems perfect in some ways. All goods are stored in common warehouses, and people request only what they need. People work as farmers some years and work at other trades other years. Everyone must work, but people only have to work 6 hours per day. Society provides free hospitals, is tolerant of various religions, and all citizens are encouraged to learn in their free time. Yet More's utopia has a dark side. On the surface, utopia sounds like a good place to live, but the society is not perfect. Each household has slaves who are foreigners or criminals. They're restrained with golden chains. Although people own slaves, they do not own other property. Every few years, the citizens rotate houses. No one owns their own home. Traveling without a passport and committing adultery are both punishable by enslavement. Women are subject to their husbands and must confess their sins to them once a month. Obviously, not all is ideal in paradise. So let's look closely at this idea of utopia. Utopia is a place or state of ideal perfection. What would your society look like if you could design a perfect society, a utopia? Utopia is a perfect in moral, political, and social aspects. It's important to recognize that a utopian society is not just a perfect governing body. It's also not a perfect religious doctrine. A utopian society is going to look closely at how can it control the moral, political, and social aspects of a society in order to make it a state of ideal perfection. Utopia is a reaction to the belief that man is ultimately evil and needs governing. More and other theorists who looked at utopian societies were reacting to the idea that man, if left to his own devices, would act selfishly. He would hoard resources and supplies. He would steal. He would kill. Utopia ultimately leads to dystopia, a place or state that is opposite of perfection and is seen as undesirable and even frightening. We're going to look closely at number 4 in The Giver. A society that may start as a utopia, a place or state of ideal perfection in moral, political, and social aspects, will ultimately lead to a place that is actually fairly frightening, where individuals in the society are controlled in all aspects of their life. And then utopia, as well as dystopia, are both universal themes in literature. We're going to see this idea play out in The Giver, short stories, and even some videos that we'll watch during this unit. Throughout history, this ideal state of perfection has been looked at in literature. So what's the difference between dystopia and utopia? A dystopian society is a society that is or has become dysfunctional. It's described as a utopia with fatal flaws. In fiction, dystopias often point out the negative consequences of a society's current behavior. For example, an author might show what happens when a society relies too much on technology. In Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury shows what could happen in a society with censorship and no books. There are lots of dystopian novels. Some of them, after reading The Giver, you may want to pick up if you like this genre. Some examples of dystopian novels are 1984 by George Orwell, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, The Giver, which we're reading by Lewis Lowry, A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, which I know many of you have read. So we're going to begin this unit and begin thinking about if we could design a utopia, what would it look like? And over time, if that utopia existed, would it become a dystopia? I'm excited.